Hi, and welcome back to the Witching Half Hour or so. Today's episode is another tarot talk episode where I get into the high arcana of the tarot. I've got more than 25 years of experience reading for people and sitting across the table. And I'm super excited about these episodes, just getting into the artwork, getting into the symbology, and breaking down the tarot. Before we do that, I do have some housekeeping. You might all know that we're running a giveaway right now. That is over on my Instagram account, which is Sprite Made Soaps. I make artisan soaps and spa products. I'm doing a giveaway. You need to go to the giveaway page on my Instagram, like it, follow, and tag a friend, and you will be entered into our in-bulk giveaway, which will be for a spa package witchcrafted by me at my little hearth just for you and full of all kinds of witchy woo. The other thing going on for me right now is the end of March, the 24th, I will be teaching. I'm running a class through Zoom, so it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I work with a group of healers and psychics called Spirit Essence. You can sign up for my class at www.spiritessencebytaradiana.com. A link to that class will be in the episode description. I want to thank you all for subscribing, for liking the podcast, for anyone who has left a review. It really, really, really does help me get out there and reach more people to do that. So I really thank everyone who's done that. Okay, let's talk about this tarot card. The card we are looking at today is one of my very, very favorites. It's the High Priestess card. Of course, it's my favorite, right? I totally identify as a witch. I'm way into being a reader and a seer, and that's what this card is all about. She represents a woman who lives between the pillars of knowledge and can see past the veil and into the deeper meanings of life. Let's look at some of the traditional symbology. That's usually where we start, right? So we have got our High Priestess. She is sitting on a throne. Typically, she's between two pillars. We've touched on these pillars briefly before. They're used a lot in the symbology of the tarot. You will see two pillars behind many different high arcana characters. You will also see them, I think it's on the Moon card that they're very, very prominent. The High Priestess card is where they seem to be the most prominent, if you ask me. One is usually dark, one is usually light. They symbolize the idea of duality, of the unseen world, that esoteric idea of as above, so below, right? And they're very bold in this card. It really is to symbolize that she is living in that space between the seen world and the unseen world. She is grounded in reality, but she is open to all of the unseen. There's often a veil hung between the two pillars, and this is really that veil between the worlds, right? I've even heard it broken down that the pillars in the Kabbalistic sense symbolize the doorway to the tomb of Solomon. No, the temple of Solomon, and that there used to be an actual veil that was hung there, and only initiates or students of the Cabal who have reached a certain level were allowed into the temple and behind the veil. And it's there in this card. You've got that veil hung between those two pillars of knowledge. There's a whole kind of idea there about how the veil between our worlds can be sensed and felt, but it is only students who have balance between mind and emotions that can truly see beyond the veil. In her hand, our High Priestess holds a book. It is the Book of Knowledge. Again, traditionally, many people believe it is the Kabbalistic Book of Knowledge. It is a symbol of deep knowing and understanding, and a symbol that she is an initiate, that she's a very learned woman. In her hands, she holds the keys that open the realms of knowledge. Sometimes you will see on her head a crown. It can be very traditional in older decks and really is similar to like a papal crown with the bands around it and like a crescent moon or some kind of a double cross. Like it's a cross with two lines. Like it's not a T, it's like a double T. I'm not describing that well. Thank the goddess that we are going to have pictures and a YouTube video so you can see all this, because I do not always describe it well. So a lot of what she stands for is she is speaking about the subconscious mind. When she shows up in a spread, the high priestess is asking us to look deeply into things, to look beyond the surface and go behind the veil, looking to deeper and spiritual aspects of an issue. She asks you to use your intuition and to seek answers of a more spiritual meaning. There's always themes of balance and the themes of walking between the two worlds. Now that's her traditional meaning, right? To look deep into the spiritual aspects. Since I've been reading for years, I've had her come up in different ways when I'm reading. A lot of times I find when you're sitting across the table from someone, the High Priestess card comes up to really talk about the development of our own spiritual gifts. She will show up for a lot of people on the path of a healer, on the path of a developing psychic or developing reader. She really comes forward as a seer. And you see, as we start looking at the artwork within our more contemporary decks, the character of the High Priestess in our High Arcana is one that has changed a lot over the years. She's kind of gone from the traditional symbol of the subconscious and the esoteric world to start to represent a woman standing in her power and using her intuition and all of her divine feminine gifts. I really feel like in this age we're in now, here in the 2020s, that our collective conscious is really expanding the idea of female empowerment and what is a empowered woman. And the way the High Priestess now shows up in our contemporary decks, I think really reflects that movement of ideas. And honestly, guys, I'm having a really hard time picking what decks I'm going to showcase, because I always pick a card from my collection of decks. And when I buy a tarot deck, I don't buy a deck that I don't like the High Priestess in. It's one of the cards I specifically look at when I'm buying a deck. With that being said, I tend to lean towards a deck where she looks really active and really powerful. I kind of feel like this episode, especially the YouTube, might turn into me going, and I love this card, it's so pretty, and I love this card, it's so pretty, and I love this card, it's so pretty. It's really been difficult for me to choose cards to showcase and what decks to showcase. Oh, I digressed again. Okay, so when we're looking at her meaning and the way the High Priestess shows up in contemporary decks and in spreads when I'm reading across from clients, her old school or traditional meaning is still there. She's still asking us to dive into the deeper meanings, to look at our situation from a spiritual perspective, to go deeper, to go beyond the mundane and see behind the veil of what is happening in our lives. How our subconscious patterns and our subconscious desires are driving us. She also will come up when I have a client who's just starting to open up psychically, who's just starting to open up to their intuition and is learning to trust. She really feels like an initiatory symbol. And when you think about looking at the tarot and the High Arcana from the perspective of the Fool's journey through the different archetypes that are presented, he meets the magician who talks to him about empowerment and being in his power. And then he meets the High Priestess, which is all about the innate ability that is born within us to connect with our highest self, to connect with the spiritual realm, and to live our life from a place of open-heartedness and spiritual love. Like I was saying, when I pick up a tarot deck, I always examine what the High Priestess looks like before I buy that deck. I personally resonate with the archetype of the seer, of the High Priestess. Well, like, come on, I'm out here saying I'm a witch, right? So obviously, I'm going to resonate with that archetype. The idea of holding the knowledge, diving deep into spirituality. So what decks do I want to share with you? I think one that I want to share with you for sure is the Llewellyn deck. I've read with this one for a long, long time at Psychic Fairs. It's a very great deck. The palette is lovely. The High Priestess in this one just blows my mind. They do step away from the traditional, and the way it's represented is so gorgeous. I'm going to go grab the card so I can describe it to you guys. They've named her Caradwyn. I don't know if you're familiar with the legend of Caradwyn and her cauldron. It's a beautiful story. Her cauldron is present in this. What I find amazing and why I love this card so much is she's sitting on a throne, but instead of being in like a room, she's in the forest. The pillars are not present. Well, not in a traditional sense. The card is divided in half, and right down the middle of Caradwyn, you can see that to the card's right is autumn and decay and the underworld, and to the card's left is spring and beauty and youth. As above, so below. Light and darkness are in balance. She is sitting between the two worlds. And in the tree, instead of a veil, behind her you have a spider web. The book of knowledge is still in her hands. She doesn't have the keys. Instead, she's holding what looks like wheat or something like that, which makes sense because she's a Celtic goddess and that's like a harvesty thing, right? It's very clear that she is a woman of knowledge, that she is walking between the worlds, that she has mastered the light and the darkness. Very clear in this card that she is a seer. She has her cauldron right there, and there is actually a scrying pool at her feet. Yeah, there's a scrying pool at her feet. So multiple ways that they've depicted that she is a seer, that she has esoteric knowledge. She does have the crescent moon on her head. Not a crown per se, like a traditional one. She looks very non-traditional. She looks very wild woman of the forest. Very much the witch you would meet in the grove. Let's talk about The Legacy of the Divine Tarot by Ciro Manchetti. You guys know he's my favorite artist, right? I love his decks. I only have one of them. I just love them though. His artwork's lovely. So when you look at the High Priestess in this, now the camera is zoomed in quite a bit more than the other one. So it's just her countenance, like her face. And then all the symbology is there. It's very stylized though. She has the two pillars. She has a scroll in her hand. So that's the book of knowledge. Although she's not carrying the keys, she is carrying the pomegranate. So there's a huge lore around pomegranates, right? Originally, they say that is the actual fruit that Eve ate. It is the fruit of knowledge from the Garden of Eden. She's peering out directly at you. There's a lot of esoteric symbolism in here. We've got a moon, an actual physical moon in the background, an owl, which is often associated with for me anyway, the owl is always associated with knowledge, but also knowledge of death. I feel like the owl is a messenger between the underworld and the above world. And I don't know where I get that information from. Why do I have that in my brain? I don't know, lovelies. I think I'm going to have to do some research on that for you. She is wearing like an Egyptian style kind of symbol. I don't know what symbol that is on her forehead. There is like the wheel of time behind her through the pillars on the other side of the pillars. So you really get this connection that she is standing between worlds, kind of in a doorway, right? She has the scrying pool. She's in water. So again, the subconscious mind is often represented by water. So is our emotions. And you know what? I've always thought she really looks like the princess from the Neverending Story. What is it they call her in that book? The child empress? Yeah, she totally looks like the child empress from the Neverending Story movie from the 80s. So if you are a Gen Xer like me, you'll probably remember that movie. She totally looks like that. Because this card is zoomed right in on her face, it really gives the impression of intimacy. It brings to mind more of those themes of personal power, like an invitation to the initiate. Where traditionally when she's sitting back on her throne, it really feels like she's saying, hey, are you aware of your gifts? Where this one, because she's so close, I really feel like it's almost like she's giving you the knowledge. She's handing you the scroll. She's handing you the pomegranate, and she's saying, use your intuition. What else can I say about this card? I think that's it. I think that's about everything I can say about this card. I think, though, it's interesting when we look at these decks to see how each artist takes the traditional stuff and just tweaks it to bring forward the theme of the deck they're building. In prepping for this recording session, I seriously just grabbed a bunch of decks off of my shelf, and I'm just opening them up and pulling out the High Priestess cards. The next one I'm looking at is my Steampunk Tarot. This one's super fun, and I always want to bring forward different decks, like really serious style contemporary decks. But I also want to always bring out for you some of the funner decks I have, because I really think that even in our novelty decks, even in our like stylized collector's decks, you can still find the themes in there. I don't own the Tarot of the Cat because I'm a bit more of a dog person, but you could read from it. All the symbology really should be in there. So the next deck I grabbed is my Steampunk Tarot. Looking at this High Priestess, again, like every one of them, I'm going to talk about what traditional symbols are there. So she has the pillars. They're covered in gears, but they're there. And one is lighter and one is darker. So you do have that darkness and shadow. Maybe I'll just rewind a bit and just like talk about the card before I break down the symbology, because unless you're right in front of YouTube looking at it, you're not gonna be able to see it. So in the Steampunk Tarot, it's a totally different picture. It's a steampunk girl who's wearing this super cool slash hat, and she's sitting at like a fortune teller's table, right? She's got a crystal ball in front of her. She's got tarot cards in front of her, and she's telling your fortune. So definitely has that theme of the seer, right? Now, all the traditional, not all, but a lot of the traditional symbology is there, right? She is standing between two pillars. They're in the background. They look like they're holding up her circus tent. One of them is darker and more bronzy, and the other one is lighter and more silver. So you have that darkness and lightness. That duality is right there in the card. There is a background of a circus tent. It's red and it is draped. So you have the symbolism of the veil. Instead of a book of knowledge in her hands, what she is holding is a tarot card full of esoteric knowledge. She's got the whole deck. She's laid it out in front of her. She's doing a reading. She's totally got this wicked, mischievous smile on her face. So you know she knows everything. She has a crystal ball on the table. She has that in place of the keys, right? Instead of the keys, the artist has decided to use a different tool of knowledge. And then she's got the crescent moon along the crystal ball. You know that one we all see for the triple goddess, waning moon, full moon, waxing moon? That is on the base of her. So we even have the moon showing up here. She doesn't have a crown, but she's got this wicked, huge top hat that is just like Slash. And in place of bands around it, she's got some steampunk goggles. All the elements are there, guys. Her personality is so fun and mischievous. I really like this deck. It's fun to read. I don't bring it to a lot of psychic fairs because it is so stylized, but I read it with a lot of my friends. And you'll see, I think I've done a couple tarot talks with it. Oh, yeah, I think I would like to say, too, that she's really sitting in a position of power. She looks like she is in control of her whole life. She knows secrets. She does have a very mischievous, secret kind of grin and look to her. So again, we've got a card that's talking about using your intuition, tapping into your feminine power, looking behind the veil, looking for the knowledge you need. This is such a fun deck. I really like the stylizedness in this deck. I think every single court card is a female. Oh no, the kings are men, but the queens, pages, and the knights are all women in this deck. It's pretty cool. Now, what other deck should we use? Oh yeah, I was going to look at more like stylized decks and more novelty decks to really show with the High Priestess card. Even in our fun collector's decks, there is the symbology, right? I have this Alchemy Tarot deck that a beautiful friend of mine, she knows who she is. She bought it for me many years ago. I think for like my 35th birthday or something. I don't bring it out often, but I forget what the High Priestess looks like in it. I couldn't bring her to mind, so I thought I would pull it out today while we were recording and just look at it. See if it'll fit the bill and have all of the different aspects that we've talked about and the different symbols we've talked about. The reason I want to see is this is probably one of my most novel decks. It's a collector deck. I use it to read for myself. I don't bring it to psychic fairs because it is very stylized. It is full of skulls and dragons and gargoyles. And the chalices are full of blood. It's very dark. It's very gothic. And I love it. Yeah, so let's have a look. I'm going to pause this so I can find her. She's not in the top. Okay, hang on. Okay, I found it. And I gotta say, this might be one of the ones that doesn't have any of the traditional stuff. She's not traditional at all. So first off, she's a pixie. She's in a forest and she's got lots of skulls around her. She's sitting on like a throne of skulls and she's holding a skull kind of circa Hamlet in Horatio when he's like holding it and he's like, "Et tu, Horatio, da da da," and he goes into his to be or not to be soliloquy. So no pillars, no veil. Now the skulls do represent the underworld and dark knowledge. She is a fairy, so she doesn't live in our time at all. So I found a card that breaks the tradition. So how would we read this in a spread, right? How would we relate this to the idea of subconscious mind, the ability to see past the veil and into other realms, and deep esoteric knowledge of a priestess? The pixie herself is from another time and space. She's holding skulls, so we have life and death. We have that duality, right? The underworld, the subconscious. I feel like I'm reaching a bit. I feel like I have to study this deck. I've never really studied this deck, guys. I just take it out and I just read it and play with it and love it because it's awesome and it's full of my favorite things. Skulls and dragons and gothic gargoyles and werewolves and stuff. But I've never really studied it as a study deck. Very cool. Okay, so this is the first card we've come across together spontaneously that doesn't fit our symbology. And I do feel like if I start relating everything, I do feel like I'm making it fit rather than allowing the card to speak. So the main duality I can see is life and death. Okay, we've got a pixie, we've got a fey creature, and we have skulls all over. So that's where I can see the duality. I do see some ideas of the underworld in the skulls and of crossing through veils because she is a pixie, so she doesn't live in our space and time. But that's it, guys. Very cool. I'm excited to put this one out for you guys. And give me your opinion. How would you read this? How would you relate this one to the ideas of subconscious mind, using your intuition, initiate into the esoteric? Let me know what you think. All right, so the next deck I grabbed for you is the Wildwood Tarot. We talked about this one when we looked at the Magician card and how it has all the symbology, but a very, very cool take on it. It uses a lot of Animalia type imagery. Our High Priestess is called the Seer. She is out in nature. She has a scrying pool above her and she's actively scrying into it. There's symbols on the scrying pool of just like the sacred spiral and whatever. She's got animal skin. Oh my gosh, no, it's not animal skin. It's bird feathers. So again, that symbology of being between the worlds. A lot of the animal totems that are birds. They symbolize being able to, especially eagles, they symbolize being able to be of two worlds, both of the water and the sky, both of the earth and the sky. So she's covered in a mantle of bird feathers. Her hand is outstretched to the ground, and you can feel that she's actively pulling up. So they don't have the veil or the pillars. Behind her stands a beautiful tree. Makes you think of the tree of knowledge. And I'm wondering, because in our Llewellyn Tarot, they use the tree to show one season on one side and one season on the other. It does not show that. The tree just looks awesome. So I think the veil here is totally being symbolized by that scrying pool and that she's actively scrying. It's breaking from the traditional ideas of the pillars and the tomb of Solomon. You do have the idea of as above, so below, because her staff is pointing up and her hand is pointing down. So that very traditional Wiccan style posing where you're drawing from the ground and you're drawing from the sky. So as above, so below. So you do have duality there, but that's really the only place. She's looking down into the scrying pool. I feel like this card more asks you to look inward for your wisdom. Love this card. Now, what do you think, guys? Should we dive into one more really quick? I was thinking we would look at my new deck. I just bought the Deviant Moon Tarot, and it's so cool. And I'm just starting to work with it. I've done a couple readings for some people, some very special people to me. My cousin actually was the first one to get a reading from it, and I did one for myself, and holy molies, was it ever like just very revealing, very deep emotional deck. So I'm going to grab it and we'll look at the High Priestess from that one. Okay, so looking at the Deviant Moon Tarot, the artist behind this is Patrick Valenza. Brand new deck to me. So I did buy it. I was shopping for decks recently. I bought 2 new decks. And it is like nothing I've ever seen. It's super arty, super stylized. I really want to do kind of like a deck review on it on the YouTube page. So that is in the works. It's an art deck. I do read with it because why wouldn't I? It's gorgeous. It does have a fairly dark theme to it. And I'm finding the readings that I do, if you just want to know about your relationship on a surface level, this is not the deck to dive into. It gets into some really subconscious style stuff, right? Total contrast to the Alchemy Tarot, which is a novelty tarot, an arty tarot, a collector's tarot. This is another branch of the collector kind of thing with decks. So the High Priestess, this is probably the first time I've really looked at it other than when I first opened it. She is amazingly powerful looking. She is a waning gibbous moon. So that means that her light side is to the left and her dark side is to the right. She's sitting on a throne. There are angel wings behind her. There are 2 pillars in the background. So you got your light and dark. I believe that the wings are symbolizing the kind of otherworldly between worlds, esoteric knowledge. She is in a cloak. She has her hands up, crossing across her chest. She looks incredibly powerful. She actually looks like someone you would not want to trifle with, to tell you the truth. And when I kind of feel into this card, I would say the aspect of the High Priestess that she highlights is subconscious emotion. I feel like when this one showed up in a spread, the cards around her would really show you what was happening in the subconscious arena for your client around the question. She really comes across not like she's holding or offering you knowledge, but that she is knowledge. She comes across also as kind of like a shadow aspect of the High Priestess, but I really think pretty much everything in this deck comes across very shadow aspect-y. And she's not so much like the Legacy of the Divine Tarot. She's totally, the High Priestess is basically welcoming you into the fold and going, come this way, I have esoteric knowledge for you. This High Priestess is saying, here's my message. Take it or leave it. She's saying it gently, but I don't think it's, how do I put this into words? She's definitely speaking out from behind the veil. That's how I want to say this. I would say that this card is speaking out from behind the veil. She's not showing you the veil. She's not saying, here's the veil, there's esoteric knowledge behind it. She's really embodying that I have answers and esoteric knowledge, and this is my message to you. Yeah. Wow, hey? Oh, I'm glad you guys sat with me through that. That was kind of fun. All right, so I don't know, how many decks did I go through today? Was that 4? Was that 4 or 5? Anyway, I think that's good, right? I think today the big takeaway for me, for like what I learned making this episode, is that we really need to be open to the themes in our different decks. I think through the different themes, we can gain a deeper understanding of like the energy in each archetype. When we're looking at the High Arcana, remember, the character cards for sure symbolize different archetypic characters in our subconscious, in the collective conscious that we can learn from. Often it's taught, and the way I've taught it a lot, is the Fool's journey, the hero's journey through the High Arcana, and many of the characters are people he actually meets to try to open him up and evolve the Fool. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my little podcast. Please like it, rate it. If you want, give a review, right? I can't tell you how much that does to help other people find this podcast. You can always find me on the social medias. I'm on Instagram as Sprite Made Soaps. I'm on TikTok as Sprite Made Soaps. I do drop a Tarot Tuesday every week over on Instagram. And I'm also starting to put a monthly tarot forecast, like a tarot reading for everyone over on the YouTube channel, which is Tarot Talks. It's kind of hard to find. I'm going to link it, as always, in the show notes. And if you go to my Instagram, I do have Linktree, so everything should be on there, right? I do have a web page that is jodiannpsychicmedium.com. You can book a reading with me there. What else is going on? Oh, and I'm teaching this month. I don't know if you've heard. I am teaching a tarot spread class. So that's through the collective I work with, which is Spirit Essence, www.spiritessence.com. You can sign up there. It's through Zoom, so it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can hang out with me, and it's going to be on March 24th, that class. And I'm doing a tarot spread now. If you're not a tarot reader yet, but will be because you're listening to this amazing podcast, you could use this spread with like oracle cards too. So yeah, it's an elemental spread. It's a pretty cool little quick spread. It's great. So head on over there if you really want, and you can sign up for that. All the links are in the Linktree on the social media page. All the links will also be in the show notes, which can usually be found on my website. And I think, our giveaway's still running. So there is still a giveaway running over on Instagram there's a post on there that says giveaway, that's the podcast logo. There's still time to enter because I'm going to pull the winner out of that bunch of people on the equinox, so the 21st. So yeah, there's that. So go ahead and do that, and I will see you guys on another witching half hour or so. Bye, babies.